I love the Ukrainian people so much that meeting them, getting to know them, was by and far my favorite part of the mission, because at the end of the day, mission's about people, right? You don't. Yes, you're going to preach the gospel. That's the job, but you're inviting others to receive the restored gospel. You're inviting others to come unto Christ, and it's that others part. It's the people. There has to be a person, and the message, how the gospel is delivered, is so dependent on the person that's receiving it. And getting to know the people and getting to become friends with them was absolutely the most incredible part of my mission. They have such different lives than we do. I mean, they have lived a completely different lifestyle. They've seen so many different things. And, for them, I was baptized when I was 8, in 1998. And I would be considered a very old member of the church in Ukraine, because the gospel was that part of the country was open for proselyting of the gospel in 1990, 1991, early 1990s timeframe. And so, I mean, the oldest members have been members for maybe 25 years, right? Ish. And what that means is these people are very young in the gospel. And so they haven't had the gospel. They don't have, especially when you come to a place like Utah, that's had the presence of the gospel for a very long time, relatively speaking. Their traditions have kind of grown off the religious practices, and that's fine. That's fun. That adds to the flavor of the culture here in Utah. But in Ukraine, they're just developing there. So it's fascinating to get to know people and to see the struggles that they have, to see the youth go and be examples. I mean, you have smoking and pornography and drinking are very prevalent over there, and there's very early exposure to that. And so seeing the youth of the church learn at a very young age to make that decision, hey, am I going to do the right thing or am I not going to do the right thing, is moving, because those youth are 10 times stronger youth as I ever was when I was their age. And so seeing them make the right decision, seeing them change their lives, seeing them being willing to stick out from the crowd and get made fun of for it, of course. I mean, they get made fun of all the time for their beliefs, but they are very, very strong, because they have to be. And hearing their stories was inspiring. Watching them live the gospel in post-Soviet Ukraine, inspiring, because it's a hard life they live, but they managed to do it well. So I guess I kind of focused on some of the members. From a general standpoint, the people have a completely different mindset from Americans, and that was something that is at first really frustrating, because at first, I mean, I suppose we all naturally, intuitively think that the way we've been doing things is perhaps the right way, because that's what we're used to. However, that's obviously not true. There's definitely many ways of doing things, many ways of living that aren't wrong per se. They're just different. And so going over there and, listening to someone and their logic behind how they would solve a problem is just so different, than how I would have addressed the problem. And at first, when I first got there, first few months, I was really frustrated, because why these people, they don't do this right, and blah, 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 that doesn't make any sense. But, it's kind of a harsh critic. But then I realized, as I began to mature and began to say, you know what, actually, I'm the one in the wrong here. They're not doing anything wrong. It's just different. And they have a different mindset, a different mentality on life and how to do life, and sure, in some regards, maybe they were doing things in a more difficult way. But in other regards, I would be astounded, like, oh, that's a really interesting way of thinking about something. So one little funny example, I remember I had a conversation with a member, and over there, especially in the little city that I was at, one of the first cities that I was in was a kind of in like the suburbs of Donetsk, so a little bit outside the city, but they put not as much money. They put dirt on top of the ice to give it traction as opposed to salt. And I remember saying, why don't you guys put salt on there? And they're like, why would you want to put salt? I said, well, so the ice will melt. And they're like, that's dumb. Why don't you just put dirt on there so there's traction on the ice? And I just sat there, and at first I was kind of a little mad. I was like, no, that's like, it'd be better for the ice to be gone. And they're like, why? Why not just make it so you can have traction, so you can walk on it without slipping? And I was like, I guess at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. And it was just so interesting because it was like, I would never have thought that. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you can walk on without slipping, isn't that the point of salting the road so that so you have traction? And yeah, that's what they did. And so it was just really, really very interesting way of handling situations. And when you can accept that, when you can accept people for how they are and realize that even as missionaries who are there to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, we're not there to I guess fix people. We're there to invite them to fix aspects of their lives that aren't in harmony with the gospel, but for them to do it on their own. I was not there as a missionary to say, here's how you should be living, now live that way. It was my job to say, here's how Christ lived, and we invite you to do the same, because that will bring you the most happiness that you could ever possibly experience. And when you make that transition, and I think this will go to any culture, to any people, but especially in a culture that's very, very, very different from an American culture, then all of a sudden you begin to be able to love the people. I couldn't love the people until I made that switch. The first 6 months on my mission were very hard because I couldn't love the people because I didn't accept them for who they are and then invite them to change. I kept trying to fix them. Well, when I finally made that transition, a lot of prayer, a lot of effort on my behalf, all of a sudden I began loving every single Ukrainian person that I saw, and still do to this day. Whenever I see someone speak Russian, especially if they're Ukrainian, I just immediately am obsessed with that person. I just want to talk to them, ask them about their lives, talk to them in Russian, practice my Russian because it's getting a little rusty. But yeah, absolutely. The greatest gift of my mission, one of them at least, was definitely falling in love with those amazing people.